All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Benigni, Sal Maiorana, a morning recording, which is rare
Yes,
for us. So, Sal,
I am.
good to you, man.
I am already one coffee in, so I won't be drinking my Dunkin' Donuts coffee on screen today. Not that we're trying to recruit them as a
Yeah,
sponsor, Adam, but
no, but
I
that's life. That's
it
life. You're a
that's
Duncan guy.
I'm a Dunkin' guy, absolutely. So yeah, I've got that in. I'm ready to roll here.
This is the home brew,
Oh,
but
nice.
it gets it done. All right, so hello everyone, and we now have at least the initial 53-man roster for the Buffalo Bills. So we're going to spend about 20 minutes breaking that down for you, some early impressions, and we'll see how it evolves moving forward. But so let's start with Joe Andreessen, Sal. And this is a guy we've talked about, hometown product, Buffalo, Lancaster, UB, tryout guy, and winds up on the 53. We suspected that he would. There were plenty of indications of that, most notably his play, especially in that Pittsburgh game in the preseason, and then some really good vibe from Sean McDermott about what he was bringing to the table. I think the thing it's a feel-good story across the National Football League, and justifiably so, but this kid, I think he really earned it, which makes
Yeah,
it even more special.
yeah, he did, Adam. I mean, look, back in May, they had 91 guys because they had the kid from the international program, Clayton. I would have ranked Andreessen as about the 90th guy to make the team. There was no way I saw a path for him to make the 53-man roster. So good for him. He showed enough in that tryout camp during rookie mini camp weekend that they brought him back for the OTAs, and that led to him signing, a rookie entry level contract. Go to training camp, see what you can do, kid. And guess what? The kid played really well. They had opportunity with Matt Milano missing not only practice time, but then obviously couldn't play any games. So there were some reps to get. And with the Milano injury, they wanted to make sure they kept Terrell Bernard in bubble wrap, so that gave him more opportunity. And this is what you have to do, Adam. If you're going to make a 53-man roster, you have got to show out. And the kid showed out. So for now, he's on the team. Again, we're not going to get overly excited here because, by the time people are seeing this Adam later today, he might already be gone and on the practice squad because there's going to be, waiver claims and whatever. But right now, let's celebrate Joe Andreessen making the team because it's a great story.
Absolute great story. And it also speaks to, maybe to put it in a kind of a broader sense, a trend in the National Football League as it relates to special teams, right? And the kickoff rule change. And we had talked about how it would affect some roster decisions. And I mean, depth at linebacker with him is one thing, and he's shown he can play the position, but his contribution to special teams and what's required there now is also a big part of the decision, I think, here.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to be, if you're a backup player, really at just about any position, you've got to have some value in special teams. And we've talked about this before. Linebackers are particularly suited to play special teams because they're generally really good athletes. Now, again, Adam, let's also tap the brakes too. I don't think if he is on the 53-man roster come week one, I would still expect he's probably going to be a game day inactive. So I don't think we're going to be, just because he can play special teams, I don't think we're going to see him on a weekly basis. So we will tap the brakes. But the key is that he's on the 53-man roster. And if he remains there, he's going to be able to practice and develop. And if they have an injury or two, then he'll get his opportunity to go up and play.
All right. The other really surprise, Andreessen wasn't a surprise, at least as far as the initial 53 was. We had speculated about that. However, Daquan Hardy, the return game, I mean, his decision-making had been called into question, and obviously those who make the decisions had the same questions that a lot of other people did. I mean, I expected him to be on the team, but they go out and trade and try and upgrade in the return game. Your reaction to that?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised because I thought the reason why I thought Hardy was going to make the team was that he was the guy who seemed to be the front runner to be the return man. Now, I thought all along before this trade happened that I think that Ty Johnson would probably be the kickoff returner, and then Hardy would be the punt returner. And, you know, the way they were using him on defense, Adam, he played nickel cornerback at Penn State. They had him playing on the boundary when he was in the, I mean, almost all of his snaps were on the boundary. And it looked to me, again, we don't know what they know. They watched the film closer, but it looked like he was holding his own. He made some plays. He broke up a couple passes. There was one against Carolina where he lost coverage. But overall, I thought, you know what? If that kid can play on the outside and be a backup in both spots, out and in, and be the punt returner, that's a guy you keep on the team. Well, clearly they must not have been impressed enough with the defensive part of it. And then, as you mentioned, he did make some wonky decisions. You know, I think he fielded in the first 2 games, I think it was 3 punts, might have been 4 inside the 5-yard line.
Right. Yeah.
So I get that the kid's, he's anxious. He wants to field the ball and make a play. But I think the Bills might have looked at it and said, hey, what's with the decision making? We can't have that. So they make this trade for Brandon Codrington, who's another Joe Andreessen, right? I mean, he was played at a small school. He's a rookie tryout guy. He made it. I had the tape of him or the tweet that I saw of the one big return that he had against the Panthers. He looked pretty good on the kickoff return, and he also did it in college. You know, Hardy only did it in college, and I think it was only punts his last year at Penn State. This kid was the punt returner and kick returner pretty much his whole career. So he's got a lot of experience. And hey, he's basically DeQuan Hardy. He's a backup DB rookie who's going to return kicks.
All right. But again, the decision at that point to make that move, to make that deal, just clearly showed you they weren't satisfied with what they had. And that, aside from the Andreessen story, is kind of what stood out the most to me. Let's talk about quarterback and how they're moving forward there.
Yep. Look, we all knew that they were going to cut DiNucci and Brown. There was no doubt about it. So the decision was going to be, or the determination, I should say, is how serious is Mitch Trubisky's knee injury? And when they cut DiNucci, Adam, I thought, well, maybe Trubisky's going to be fine and he'll be the number 2, and then they'll just get DiNucci on the practice squad later on. Well, when they cut him and then they signed Mike White last night to the practice squad, that's the indication to me that Trubisky's not going to be ready for week 1, because Mike White will then be the elevated quarterback to back up Josh Allen. They couldn't do that with DiNucci. There's no way they were going into a game as him as the backup. Mike White can play. I mean, he's not great, but he's got a little bit of a track record. Played 2 games against the Bills, if you recall. They lost both of them. Jets lost both, but he did play. He had that one game. I remember the game against the Bengals I wrote about. He threw for like 400 yards and beat the Bengals, who had Joe Burrow healthy at the time. So he's done a little bit in the league. It looks to me like Trubisky's going to be a game day inactive, maybe the first couple, 2 or 3 weeks, and Mike White will be the elevated quarterback to be the backup. That's what it looks like, at least.
But that was just a situation where they had to do. I mean, they had to shore things up behind Josh Allen.
And you know, we had speculated about that, Adam, right? We knew once the cuts were made. Remember, we talked about Bailey Zappi. He did get cut. I thought he was going to be an ideal candidate for this. They decided to go White. But we knew going into this that they were going to have to get a third quarterback, because Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown were little Band-Aids for the preseason, but not for the regular season.
No, it was pretty obvious. I mean, this is the progression that we had speculated about, and it's exactly the one they followed, with a guy who has some experience, who can at least hold things down if they have to turn to him early on here and put him in there. How about the receiver position? You very wisely noted that in the past they had kept 5 receivers. Because of the changes and moving on from Stephon Diggs, I mean, I thought they were going to go with 6. I thought that Shavers was going to be on the team. That winds up not being the case.
Yep. I mean, it was impacted by numbers, obviously, at other positions. It always is. It's not just, okay, we only can keep 5 or 6. Whatever happens on the roster is dictating how many you keep at each position, right? It's pretty obvious. But look, they've only kept 5 for, and really, I think the last time they kept 6, Adam, Andre Roberts was the 6th guy, and he wasn't a receiver. He was just a return guy, and he was a good return guy. That's why you kept him. In this case, look, this is why, Adam, I try to stay out of the judging practice routine that so many people, dive in and, make judgments off of practice, because we, again, don't really know what's happening on a play, right? We never do. So Tyrell Shavers looked like he was doing some nice things in the OTAs, which is touch football. None of that means anything to me. And then the training camp, yeah, he had some nice practices, made a few plays at Fisher. But what did he do in the games, Adam? Now, obviously, it wasn't much. And obviously, he was impacted by the quarterback play, right? He had Trubisky, who's terrible. I still think he's terrible. And then Ben DiNucci and Anthony Brown are throwing balls to him. So it wasn't much of an opportunity to really shine out. But Shavers didn't shine out when he was on the field. So, again, he was the darling of camp, but that doesn't mean anything to these personnel directors and coaches. And this is what we saw. Is he back on the practice squad? Yeah, I think there'll be an opportunity. I don't think that anybody else, I'd be surprised if somebody else picked him up. He probably will be back here on Wednesday, but I wasn't all that surprised that he got cut.
So, I think we should spend just a little bit more time at the receiver position because it's been such a focus.
Yeah.
Right? Now that they're, at least initially, you see the group that they have. That's one of the areas that I'm most anxious to see, and I think a lot of people are, because it's got such a spotlight on it as they move on from Stephon Diggs. I like the range of skill sets that they have there. I don't want to pour cold water on this at all in the kind of the direction they're going. I was in favor of moving on from Stephon Diggs, and I'm not going back on that at all. I just need to see and get a sense of, and I think you need to integrate the tight end position into this conversation, and Dalton Kincaid in particular, to really get a sense of what this passing game is going to look like. That's my take on it as we now look toward week 1 of the regular season.
Yeah, Adam, I've been looking at this the same way right along. Dalton Kincaid's a receiver. It says tight end on his designation, but he's a receiver. Dawson Knox is the more prototypical tight end. And what's funny about that is before Dalton Kincaid came along, Dawson Knox was more of a wide receiver than a tight end. But he has shown he's been pretty good as the years have gone on at doing more tight end normal things, like being in line, being able to block in the running game. So I now consider him, if you want to call him the number 1 tight end, and Dalton Kincaid's one of the 3 receivers who are going to start. So that also dictates how many receivers you're going to keep if you're playing it that way with Kincaid. What was interesting as the day was going on yesterday, so they cut Shavers. So KJ Hamler was still on the team. Mm-hmm. And that was the case pretty much all day. There was never really a rumor or a report from one of the insiders that he was off until I think it was late in the day. I was thinking, man, did KJ Hamler actually steal this 6th spot because he can return kicks? And he played running back the other day in the game. Did he really show enough to be the 6th guy? And it turned out, obviously, he didn't. So they're sticking with the 5. And I think you're right. The diversity of the group is one thing you could look at and say, you know what? And I even use this as one of my headlines. Josh Allen is not devoid of talent on this roster. He's got people that he can work with in that passing game. You integrate Kincaid. I think James Cook is going to have a bigger role in the passing game this year too. They've got to adjust, right? They're no longer going to be a downfield team with Diggs and Davis, which was what they did. They're going to have to integrate other guys into this mix. And as you said, they've got a nice grouping of people that they can do different things with.
Does that aspect concern you? The lack of a true stretch the field, downfield threat in this offense?
But I think Valdez-Scantling that's the skill he brings, right? I don't know how much he's going to play. If they have 5 active, typically I think they have 4 active, don't they? I think they usually have 4. So he might be, it might come down to matchups during the week.
Sure.
To use Valdez-Scantling. He might be the guy who's inactive unless they find a matchup where, his speed, we can really take advantage of this deep secondary. Let's get him in there. But to your point, that's what he would bring, would be a field stretching player, because none of the other guys, the other guys, Samuel, Shakir, Keon Coleman, those guys are intermediate range receivers. So that's what he'll be able to bring if he gets a jersey on game day.
All right, let's talk about, you mentioned the running back position. And look, this is a place where I feel like we've talked a lot about the potential weaknesses on this roster. I mean, I think they're in very good shape in the backfield.
Yeah,
There,
I think Cook.
offensively.
I think Cook is fine. I mean, I think he can build off last year, which he had he had a nice year. I think he was fourth or fifth overall in yards from scrimmage. So that was I think it was sixth actually. Pretty nice year for James Cook. And as I said, I think they're going to get him a little bit more involved in the passing game there. He's been very inconsistent. He had some big drops last season, but as they evolve as an offense, that's going to have to be part of it. And then behind him, look, Ty Johnson, I like the things that he can do. I still believe that, well, Codrington probably will be the guy now, but I thought Ty Johnson could contribute on kickoff return. And then Ray Davis, look, he looked good to me. I mean, he's a rookie. He's got a lot to learn, but I think that kid's going to be useful. I mean, he can play on third down, I think. So they're in a good spot there. The interesting move, Adam, was this Darrington Evans thing.
Right.
Really caught me by surprise. I mean, I had Frank Gore on the practice squad and Evans off the team completely. They designate Evans after putting him on IR as one of the two guys, Matt Milano was the other, who they could put on IR now and still designate to return. In the regular season, Adam, you only get 8 guys designated to return.
Right.
And 2 of them are these 2 count. So they've only got 6 left now. To use one on Darrington Evans was an eye-opener. But it makes me wonder, okay, what do they see in this guy? I mean, what's the plan? Because you're not going to waste a designation on a guy you're not going to use. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out.
Let's talk about Ray Davis. And I know you have a full, in-depth piece coming in the Rochester Democrat and Chronicle here. When is that coming out? And kind of give us the highlights.
It's going to be in print Sunday, but it should be online, I think, late in the week. But it's one that I enjoyed writing. So thanks for the plug. Appreciate it.
All right. So I know you had mentioned that we talked about it a couple of times, and since we were on the subject, I thought I'd kind of work it in right there. Look, I mean, that kind of brings us, unless there's some other take you want to, I mean, the rest of the decisions on this roster seem fairly obvious to me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about defense. Let's give some people some thoughts on the defense.
Sure.
Look, they've got question marks in the back 7. This we know. And
Right.
safety is a big one. But ultimately, when you look at the 53-man, it's exactly what we thought it was going to be, Adam. It's the same 5 guys that we had pegged as making the team all along. Right? Taylor Rapp, Mike Edwards, Cole Bishop, DeMar Hamlin, and Cam Lewis. So that's how it plays out. They must feel that Bishop and Edwards are going to be healthy enough, and Hamlin too. Hamlin's got the hamstring. They must feel that by the time they play Arizona, those guys are all going to be good to go. The big decision will be who starts next to Taylor Rapp. Is it going to be Mike Edwards? Is it going to be Hamlin? I don't think it'll be Cole Bishop. So that played out the way we figured, but there's still a lot of question mark because of the injuries they had. And then the Hardy thing was surprising. So they go with Codrington. They're going to have to, if he's going to be the return guy, Adam, they got to carry him active every game. So he's going to be one of the backup cornerbacks, probably the backup to Teron Johnson. And then the other spot that we talked about was the D tackle, D line, how that was going to, the math on that was going to be interesting. And it ends up they go with 6 edge rushers, 4 tackles. So Deshaun Williams gets lopped off, and quite frankly, he really didn't do much to make the team, I guess. The surprise to me was Casey Tuhill.
That's right where I was going to go.
I mean, they invested, they signed him to a 1-year free agent deal, so there's a little bit of an investment. But Adam, did you notice him once? I'll take that back. I noticed him in the Panthers game when he whiffed on a sack. I mean, he had a clear run at the quarterback, and he whiffed. So that's the only time I noticed Casey Tuhill since the moment he signed his contract.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was going to ask you right about him. I mean, Solomon was a guy we projected was going to be there. And above that, everything holds true to form. But, it's a numbers game, and it's down to, 3 or 4 players we've talked about here with maybe where you analyze where they go with this. I mean, they kind of know what they have, and now the question is, how does it translate to the regular season?
Yeah.
And as we wrap this up here, I mean, I know we repeat a lot of the same questions. look, I think it's a highly competitive team, and Josh Allen gives you that.
Yep.
I just feel like that the roster is clearly not as good as it's been in the past. I do think, especially early on here, I think they're going to take some lumps here early in the. Now, how it translates to wins and losses, I mean, that's a brutal start to the schedule. They've got to go on the road, all of that thing. But I think they're going to be tested early. And look, I mean, I still think this is a team that can very easily win the division, given who's in it, and they have the talent to do that. But after years of, and particularly, within the Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane era and how they've constructed things and around Josh Allen in the past, I just feel like there's going to be an adjustment period. I think that's realistic to expect as they transition this roster.
You said it. I wrote it this morning. You don't lose the players they lost. And I don't have to go through all the names. Diggs, Davis, all the names. You don't lose all those players mostly by your choice and expect to be better this year, because they replace those players, but I think there are a couple areas where they're just not as good as they've been. I would argue, Adam, and I made this point in my story this morning, this might be talent-wise, top to bottom, the least roster they've had in the 4 years that they've won the AFC East, right? I mean, you go back to 2019, that team had some holes. It was still on the come, and then they hit it big in 20, and they kept going since then. This roster, to me, is the lightest it's been since 2019. Now, they have the superstar quarterback. He wasn't a superstar in 2019, so that's a big difference. And I think their offense is going to be able to score points. I think they're going to be okay. It's the defensive side, which is Sean McDermott's strong suit, so we really shouldn't doubt them because they've always been good on defense. That's the issue. There's the place where you've got some real question marks. As we said, they need more pass rush from the edges. Will they get it? Dorian Williams, holy smokes. He's got to replace Matt Milano. And then the problems in the safety position. You're right. They've got a tough start to the year. Arizona won't be easy. They should win. But they got to go to Miami. Then they've got Jacksonville here, I think, at Baltimore. I think the Jets on the road are in there, and there's one more. The first 6 games, don't be surprised, Adam, if they're 2-4. I mean, 3-3 might be good. 3-3 might be a reasonable result with that start to the season. It's a tough schedule.
Tough run for them. And look, the questions on offense, moving on from Diggs, the receiver game, I agree with you. I think they're going to be productive there. It's defensively the middle of the field.
Yep.
That's where I'm most focused, and I think opposing offensive coordinators are going to have that exact focus. I think they're very vulnerable right there, especially early.
And then it comes down to a field goal, and
right.
What's going to happen? Right. There's going to be close games here. Is Tyler Bass going to be able to come through when he needs to?
All right, and that is a very legitimate question as we now officially start looking toward Arizona and Week 1. So, Sal Maiorana, are you back Friday?
I might try to do one Friday since you're going to be off on your vacation with your beautiful wife, which I commend you for. I wish I could have a vacation, but I never get one, Adam. It's just go in the Maiorana world.
Well, let's. Sal never sleeps.
Never.
Between the Yankees and the Buffalo Bills. But hey, this has been great, and I've enjoyed this. We've really kind of ramped this thing up during the course of the preseason. Worked out a few kinks here and there, but I'm anxious that we're going to be during the regular season, basically evening of the game, and then midweek Wednesday when you get the first look at really the injury report, that sort of thing, and then we'll have a ton of interesting guests as we look toward the opponent late in the week, likely on Friday. So I think this is going to be this isn't just a weekly show or sporadic. This is Believe in Bills. This is going to be something that we're kind of, very consistent and up to date through the course of each game week.
We will be, because you and I are professionals. We are the ultimate experienced, curmudgeonly professionals.
That's right. Curmudgeons, you're going to get the real, a very realistic objective. Let's call it objective view.
Yes.
On this, because I think there's going to be, there always is need for objectivity.
That's right.
When it comes to covering the National Football. All right, Sal, thanks very much. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend.
You too.
And we are back. I'll be back with you next week as we really begin to hone in on the Arizona Cardinals and Week 1. So for Sal Maiorana in Rochester, this is Adam Benigni in Buffalo. Thanks for being with us here on Believe in Bills.